Hey guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is a yet another dupe video. We're going to dupe the vibes of the newest Nomad palette, which is called the New Zealand Stargazing palette. So beautiful. Like from the artwork of the palette cover till the shades that are inside the palette, they have some beautiful shades and I cannot wait to show you how the dupe shades came across. Just to give you a sneak peek, I put everything in like an empty magnetic palette. So this is how the palette is looking. And this is the eye look that I created using this dupe palette. So if you're ready, let's begin. So let's talk a little bit about the palette itself. The palette launches on 16th of January and it will retail for $59. Now, I by no means am I telling go and purchase all the dupe palettes that I'm telling. I'm just saying if you do have these dupe palettes, you absolutely do not need this in your collection. Now, the palettes that I dupe had like magnetic shades, so I did pull those shades into a empty magnetic palette, and that's how you can see this palette here. Now this palette has 6 beautiful sparkly multi-chrome formulas along with 9 pigmented mattes. I feel like the ratio is absolutely beautiful. I like that the palette is under $60, like right below $60, and I feel like for 6 multi-chromes would high up the cost. But also if you have a lot of indie palettes in your collection, I'm pretty sure you have these shades already in your collection. So let's begin swatching and then you can make the decision for yourself whether you need this palette or not. So let's begin. But just a spoiler, the majority of the shades is from this Twisted Tea Party from Ensley Cosmetics, and some of the shadows are from the Simply Posh Cosmetics Cozy Cabin palette. So let's begin. The first shade is that black shade. I'm gonna go row by row. I'll put a picture on the screen and show you my swatches so that you can see it. The first shade has been duped by the Twisted Tea Party palette from Ensley, and this one is the shade Rabbit. It's a matte black shade, so nothing unusual. You know how much I love my Ensley palettes, so I absolutely had to get this out. But also if you have a big Simply Posh Cosmetics collection, like the way I have, Simply Posh Cosmetics also has a black in the palette, Aurora Lights, which is number 18. This is from Aurora Lights, okay? Okay, the next shade is a muted blue, I would say. And this is from the Genuine Gems palette from Simply Posh Cosmetics. And this is the shade Sapphire. It's like a blurple shade. You can see that? So that's what I'm duping the second shade with. The third shade from the palette is more like a pinky red, more like a rusty red to a green shifting shade. And I feel like if you do have, especially this palette from Ladybug Glow, this is their original palette. The 2 of the multi-chromes are in this shade and this. This is more of a rusty red to a green, and this is more of like that pink to a green. Also, if you do have Bella Beauty Bar palettes, so like the Sun and the Sea palette, recently de-influenced palette, they do have a red with a green shifting shade too. So anything would do. I'm gonna swatch this Bella Beauty Bar palette shade Heat Wave, which is a red to a green shifting shade. There you go. So you can see that. Very pretty shade. Now the fourth shade of the palette is being duped by another Simply Posh Cosmetics palette, and this was from their Fruity Punch, Citrus Punch. This one, let me see the shades. Let me just check the shade. The shade is called Quench, that was here. So let me swatch that. It's like a punchy hot pink shade. Not like super punchy. I would say it's like a corally pink shade. So let's watch that right there. Really pretty, very punchy. This would definitely amp up any looks for like spring summer season. Really pretty. The last shade in the first row, this one, is being duped by another Simply Posh Cosmetic palette, which is the Genuine Gems, and this shade is called the Amethyst, which is like a jewel tone purple shade, and that is what I have in the outer corners. You'll see this eye look towards the end of the video. So stay tuned if you want to see how I created this look. There you go. It's like a royal purple shade. Let's move on to the second row. The first shade in the second row is like a royal blue shade. It's an original, like a spot on blue, royal blue shade. And this is from the Twisted Tea Party from Ensley Rain. And the shade is called, let me see. And the shade is called Looking Glass. So let's watch that. Like a cobalt blue. There you go. So this shade is definitely much more brighter than this one. This has like that mutedness to it, as you can see. The next shade in the palette is like a blue to a purple shifting shade. Now, we do have a lot of that kind of a shades. If you do have the Adept Heather Austin palette, they have the shade Scrubs, which is like a blue to a purple shifting shade. So this is not a unique shade in the palette, because if you have a lot of multichromes in your collection, you definitely have this. This one, I duped it out from the Ensley Rain palette. And this is also like a blue to a purple shifting shade, but this has a lot more like sparkliness to it. So I wanted to just amp it up a tad bit. This has like a bunch of holochromes to it too. And this one is the shade called Bonkers from the Twisted Tea Party. So let's watch that. Such a beautiful shade. There you go. Really, really pretty. I hope you can see that shift. The next shade is like a gray shade in the palette. Now this, I duped it from the Simply Posh Cosmetics Aurora Lights palette. And this is shade number 6. So let me tell you what shade it is. It is the shade called Polar. So let's watch that. It's a true gray shade. It's a matte shade in the palette. Again, this will help definitely for like the crease shades, going for like the cool tone looks. There you go. So that is the shade, duping the shade called the Cosmos. Now the next shade in the palette is called Jewel Box. Now that has been duped by this is from the Simply Posh Cosmetics Cozy Cabin palette, and the shade is called Candy Cane. So let's watch that. This is not as shifty as the other shades. It's more like an orangey peach shade, but it has a ton of like green specks also to it. So that is duping the shade Jewel Box. The next shade is called Southern Lights. This is the last shade in the second row, and this is also dupe from the Simply Posh Cosmetics Cozy Cabin palette. This one. And this is the shade called Cozy. It's like a light peachy shade. And this was like my crease shade. Really pretty shade. So let's watch that. There you go. So those are the first two rows of the Nomad palette. I'll give you a close-up in the sunlight too, so stay tuned. Let's move on to the last row. The first shade of the last row is called Southern Cross, and this shade is being duped by the Ensley Rain Twisted Tea Party palette, and the shade is called Amanita Muscaria. It's like a magenta pink to a green yellow gold shifting shade. Such a beautiful multichrome. There you go. You can see that shift so clearly. Now the next shade in the palette is definitely outside these palettes, and I wanted to get like a spot on dupe, but I feel like I had to like dip into some Makeup Geek shadows, and this is called Charcoal Brown. It's a very muted, again like a charcoal brown shade. It's like a tan brown, but in a cool tone format. Let me swatch it for you guys. Very, very similar to my shade, but it's a little bit more on the grayer side. The next shade in the palette is called Aurora Australis, and this I had to get a multichrome out, and this is from Terra Moons Cosmetics, and this shade is called Butterfly Nebula, which dupes the shade Aurora Australis. It's such a beautiful iridescent, like it's not like iridescent, but it's like a beautiful multichrome that has gold, blue, pink, green in it. It's such a beautiful shade. So let me swatch it for you guys. Maybe the Nomad shade in that palette is not as shifty or as sparkly, but this is the closest that I could get. Can you see that shift happening? So pretty, you guys. Hope you can see that now. The next shade in the palette is called Queenstown Skyline, and this is again duping from the Simply Posh Cosmetics Cozy Cabin palette. And this shade is called Hot Chocolate. It's a very skin tone shade, but a little bit more like peachy leaning. So let me swatch that. There you go. You see that? Very light shade. This would definitely help me like blend the other shadows in the palette. So that's what I would use it for. The last shade in the palette is been duped by another Ensley Rain Twisted Tea Party palette shade, and this is called Chasing Rabbits. This is the first shade in the palette. Again, it has such a prominent shift going on. It has pink, it has that lime green shift. This shade again might be a lot more shiftier than the other shade, but again, who doesn't like that? There you go. Beautiful shades. I saw a lot of like swatch video, and that's how I came out with my shadows and comparisons. I really hope that you loved the swatches, the live swatches that I did for you guys. Now let me give you a close-up of the outside lighting, how these shadows perform in like the sunlight, so that you can also see all the shifts, the sparkles, the dimension. Now, if you are ready, let's begin creating this eye look. Okay, let's begin with the eye look. So excited. Let's start off with this shade that dupes the shade Southern Lights. I'm going to take that all across the crease. And it's a light peachy shade. To deepen the outer corner, I'm going to dip into this purple, which dupes the shade Aurora Mackenzie, I think. And let's take that in the outer corners. I'm going to tap that right there in the extreme outer corners. I'm not looking for like blending or anything, but just depositing the maximum pigmentation right there. With the same brush, I'm going to dip into that pink shade. This one, this dupes the shade Auckland Stardom. So just turning the brush, taking that punchy pink, and then just melting it right in the center of that peachy shade and that purpley shade. So once we have that all laid down, time for some shimmers because I cannot wait. Starting off with this shade, which dupes the shade Southern Cross. I'm going to just lay down on the center of the eyelid, but just taking it diagonally. And then I'm going to take this shade, which dupes the shade Jewel Box, and I'm going to take that in the inner part of the lid. I'm going to just sweep it across like that. For the inner corners, I'm going to take this shade, which dupes the shade Aurora Australis. And I'm just going to take a tad bit on the inner corners. Just right there. Just like that. Look at that. And then for the lower lash line, I'm just going to mimic this and this. And I'm going to place that on the lower lash line. Let me finish off this eye with some liner and mascara, and I'll get right back. And that's my final eye look. I really love the way how this eye turned out. I really cannot wait. I know this palette is going in my wish list, but because I duped this palette, I'll definitely keep it on the back burner. But I loved creating like a dupe version of this. You guys let me know, are you guys going to purchase this palette or not? I'm so excited for you if you are. And do let me know in the comment section below, do you like this palette or not? Do you like the color story, or are you not into these colors? But yes, that's all for today, guys. If you did like this video, if you do like dupes video, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.